let's talk about some sci-fi. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Chris, and today's video is the Arvekt by Craig Lee Gordon and also In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno book reviews. Jumping right into Arvekt. This was an entertaining cyberpunk techno-thriller which was action-packed as soon as you opened the book. The reader follows a black ops trained cyborg assassin. That is a mouthful. She is tasked with hunting down a group of brain hackers which are stealing information and processing powers. The reader is dropped right into this one. We are given no sort of hand-holding, no sort of leeway. We are in the action from page one, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes for a pretty entertaining time, in my opinion. We are dropped right into one of these missions, full of realities within realities, plenty of advanced technology and weaponry, and also a bloody battle. That all takes place within the first 20 pages or so. From the very beginning, we see that there is more that meets the eye, and we need to find out why brain hacks are happening to relatively normal people and what it means. Our main character, Tanis, falls victim to an attack of a different kind following the first mission. Her own mind seems to be playing tricks on her, and she isn't sure of her own sanity after she was essentially wiped, cleaned, and reset following a past trauma, and she's questioning if those events are going to happen to her again. And on top of this, a seemingly innocent AI who, by the way, has access to the entire population to the point where they can send code to, I don't know, destabilize everyone at one given point, seems to be running rampant. Tanis starts seeing things that aren't really there, or are they? She has to play two realities in a race against time to find out what is real and what isn't. This book was so vivid. The imagery depicted in both the world-building scenes and the battle scenes really stood out to me as the strength within this book. If you love that cyberpunk feel to bleed out of the page, you are going to absolutely find it in Arvekt. These world-building / battle scenes are probably my favorite in the entire book. We had sections of the book where reality is disintegrating into another reality, and we basically had to figure out of two things that we were seeing what was right and what wasn't, and it was an absolute blast to be a part of. It could also feel fairly disjointed if you're a new reader to this sort of genre, which I am, when you are thrown within a sentence from one place to the next. That being said, it did keep this book fast-paced and highly entertaining, even if it did take a little bit of brain work to get used to it. I also really liked the premise of this story. Arvekt really invites us as the reader to have some bigger conversations with ourselves, such as, would having a giant AI governing everything and making anything a possibility actually be a good thing, or nah? My major criticism of Arvekt is that I didn't really care for any of the characters. So there were quite a lot of characters for a 300-page book, and I feel like if you've got quite a large cast and you can't relate or really care about any of them, it is going to let you down a little bit. So I didn't mind our protagonist, Tanis, the main character. She had a little bit more depth to her to the rest of the people that we were introduced to, but at some point some of the characters just felt like chess pieces, essentially there to be moved around for the plot, but not really having any significant impact on what we were doing. And I know, having read the book, that those characters we were meant to feel more for them. I just didn't personally. I also had a couple of issues with dialogue where it sometimes felt a little bit rushed, or the way that the characters were speaking didn't quite fit ways they had previously spoken, or the overall tone of the book. There were times where there was a lot of information being put into these tiny snippets of conversation that the reader then had to keep in their heads to go forward with the book. Speaking of the dialogue, there was also quite a few info dumps, and I know that info dumps do happen fairly frequently within dialogue as people are explaining certain elements of a story, but it happened so often here, and sometimes it was hard to keep up with all of the information that was being spoken about. That being said, I think that this was a highly entertaining read. It was very fast paced, and it did keep me entertained the entire way through. The pacing of the book had an addictive feel. I always wanted to keep turning the page to find out what was happening next, with the plot more so than the characters and what this AI was going to do next. So, if you are someone who likes a lot of technology-filled action and don't mind sacrificing your enjoyment of character development to get that entertainment, then this is going to be a book that you're going to want to pick up. I am very curious to see where book 2, and I will be continuing on with the series with this one. Alright, the second book that we're reviewing today is In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno. This is the Song of Kamaria, book number 1. This was a space opera to look out for. I am one that is quite scared of space operas, quite frankly, because of the technical jargon that can sometimes be included. But I found that In the Orbit of Sirens had a surprising amount of heart, hope, and humanity, and I thought this was an absolute blast. In terms of the story, humanity is at risk. They need to flee previously occupied planets because of a species called the Undriel, or is it a species? Is it a military? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, the Undriel are bad and they are hunting humanity. They want them gone. So to basically be able to escape from that, they need to jump into a couple of big ships and fly to another planet, Kamaria. During this book, we follow both past and present POVs. We go basically from the time of the war, 300 years prior, where the Undriel were attacking humanity and human ships, right up until present time on the planet. In the present day, we follow Eliana and her scouting crew as they fight tirelessly for a cure to a disease called lunglock. They come across a curious creature upon their scouting mission called an Uknai. I think that's how you pronounce it. We'll go with that. Once they talk to this Uknai and discover some of the gems that they have, they believe they finally have a solution to their problem. Problem is with that is there's not enough for all of the humans that are currently traveling to the country on their 300-year journey. They're asleep, don't worry. They're like frozen and asleep, and they'll wake up when they get there. It's just a really long nap. Knowing that they need more of these gems, they try and find an Uknai village. They believe they find one and they go to scout this location. On one of these scouting missions, their captain Roland stumbles across a dead siren. This is an ancient alien life form, which unfortunately for everyone is not quite as dead as one had hoped, and chaos ensues. We also follow a character named Denton and his family who arrive on the second ship. His mechanical knowledge is quite impressive and he quickly gets snapped up as someone who's pretty important to this new planet. Liana and Denton find themselves caught up in a battle of ancient alien minds and humanity, and their only wish is to make it out alive with their crew intact. This book was full of space opera's most enjoyable elements, in my opinion. We have planet exploration, we have some cool alien life forms, we've got fascinating creatures. That was one of my favourite parts of this story, and also a fight for survival and a fight for humanity. In the Orbit of Sirens had a very good mix of fast-paced adventure with a slower slice of life side that lets the reader get to experience what life on this planet is all about and how it's been built up thus far. My favourite part of this book was the sheer amount of weird and wonderful creatures that we got to experience on Kamaria. These life forms that were just a little odd. From our Uknai friends, they were bird-like creatures who had their own society and were quite a large part of this book, down to the Billy Blokes, a cheeky octopus-like creature that liked to torture Denton's dad and eat his tools, and I thought they were really cute, but it just gave this world a real feel, like a real non-human feel to it, even though a lot of the elements of these creatures were, derived from animals on a human planet. Each of these creatures felt like a unique mashup of some description. It reminded me of being a kid and going to an art gallery or a science fair, and you would draw different animals together and see what they would look like, and it just feels like the author has had a lot of fun doing this on an alien planet. The other thing I really enjoyed here was the mashup of elements. There were some horror elements here which were really carefully and cleverly intertwined with the sci-fi elements to make the stakes super high in a couple of these scenes, and also some fantastical elements, I would argue, in terms of the creature and some of the magics that we get to see within this world. And I thought they were very, very well done, and it does not take away from the space opera feel at all, which I thought was very, very clever. Now, my final praise for this book is going to be the character work, particularly our two main characters, Eliana and Denton. They felt very human, they felt very authentic, and it was lovely to see them develop. That being said, we also had some familial relationships which felt really lovely and reminded me of my own sort of familial relationships that I had with my family here. I think the written relationships were a really lovely part of this book as well. I have a few small criticisms for in the Orbit of Sirens. The first is some of the dialogue felt a little bit clunky, and also there are a few times where the development of one particular character and what happened to one particular person in this book felt a little bit overdone and took away from my enjoyment of those scenes in particular. But overall, this was highly entertaining and a space opera I would recommend to people who are like me and a little bit skeptical of the whole genre. Take that as you will. Those are some very quick sci-fi reviews for you today. Have you read either of these books? Have you enjoyed them? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give it one of these. If you want to see more of it, then click subscribe at your will, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.